So as we examine the profile, you can see what we've gone for a nice, even, gentle slope, just like real ballast. The importance here is keeping the top of the ties clean, and essentially I just take my finger and I just rub off the ballast off the top of the ties. As you can see, I still got a little bit more work to do, but this is basically the rough work. I've gone ahead and touched up the sides a little bit, and essentially what I'm going to do now is continue on over to this track. So it's going to basically be the same process for all three of these tracks. So I've done the hardest one here to kind of show you guys how I do this, and again, it's kind of laborious, so I will just go ahead and fast forward once these are done. So then again, just kind of how I start to kind of take some of this ballast off the tops of the ties once I form the slopes and everything. I just use my thumb. It's just very, very easy, and I just continue to maintain that profile and keep it all intact. Now, another thing you can use to take some of the ballast off the top of the ties is the end of a paintbrush. In this case, I was using this brush to kind of clear some of the ballast off these rails, kind of in the corners like that. And so you can basically take this and just simply kind of tap on top of the track to help level it out a little bit. And it does do a good job, actually. But that's just another little tip you can apply to your own kind of ballasting that helps with this. So I have this pretty much ready to go. I have the Woodland Scenics glue in a spray bottle here, and it's pretty much ready to go. And essentially what we're going to do is just spritz this whole area. Now, we're not going to soak it all entirely at the same time. We're just going to basically give this a quick, basically a light soaking first, and then we'll come back and layer more glue on. So I just do a couple test sprays first, and then I proceed to kind of just basically start spraying it over like this to start. Kind of get a good overhead like this. So with the main coat of glue on, we can let this sit for a minute. I'll of course go back and add more layers of glue, but right now while it's still kind of drying, I'm going to go ahead and start kind of blending out the edges a little bit with a different color ballast to kind of represent a little bit more dirtier, maybe earth tone ballast to kind of transition into the grass here a little bit. So it's just right on the edges, as you can see. I'm just kind of spraying it out evenly a little bit here. Of course, you can kind of mix in a little bit here and there on your main road bed. I'm just doing this by hand. Now, again, just kind of gradually transition this. Think of how it would be in nature. If you've ever seen real road type ballast, you'll have the main ballast, and then you'll have it kind of transition to kind of a finer, maybe sometimes finer or coarser grade depending on what road it is, and it'll usually be a different color. So that's what I'm trying to kind of go for here. And you can see I've also applied it a little bit in between the tracks as well to kind of represent some dirtier ballast, kind of at the very base level. So with an overhead shot here, you guys can kind of see that looks pretty good. And that's just a little trick I like to do. A lot of people don't do that though. But it's important if you're modeling ballast. You want different colors and different shades kind of mixed in your high and low spots. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start doing the road here a little bit. And essentially, I just take the ballast and I just kind of gently spread it out in a small area at a time, like this. Kind of keeping it in the same general area for the most part. You can see we're just tying everything together here. Just doing it by hand because I can kind of control how much is coming out instead of like using a spoon or something like that, where you don't really have control of the actual portion that you're getting out. So just finish this off. So again, I'm just going to go in and take my hand to do this, and I'm just going to gradually kind of stretch this row bed out a little bit. I don't want to put it up on the ties again. I'm just kind of carefully stretching this out, kind of sloppily, but just like this. And again, doing it with your hand is more precise, so I'm not spilling rock all over the place where I don't want it. I don't want it necessarily too far out in the parking lot. I just really want it along the main line, so I'm just kind of precisely building it up right now. So this is kind of another one of those things that you may want to consider doing, but I'm going to go ahead and carve out a little area in the ballast to go ahead and install a little basic concrete base for a signal. Actually, the customer wants to have a signal installed on it, and now that the ballast is kind of starting to set up, I can go ahead and scrape it away a little bit. And essentially I'm going to glue this little base down, which I have right here, and I'm basically just trying to kind of match that shape. And now with that base installed, we can go ahead and kind of wrap the ballast around that little edge like this. And then essentially, just take a little handful of extra ballast here. I'm just going to blend it out like that. So it's really simple. And essentially what I'll do is I'll just go back and I'll just kind of clean some of the ballast off the top of the post there. Essentially what I'm going to do, once this is glued in place, I'll take the signal, which is a BLMA piece, and I'll be able to kind of set it down right here. Now with everything in place, we can go ahead, go back and start adding another layer of cement to this. Go ahead and seal it in place. But really hit ballast very well. You want this soaked. You can see I'm really going heavy with this, hitting all these areas completely. These have to be soaked. Okay, so the ballast is starting to kind of set up a little bit. You can see it's starting to get pretty firm, which is good. I'm going to put another coat of the glue on in a second, but what we're going to work on now is the grass. And we're going to go ahead and start filling in these areas. And again, like I said, I always wait to do the grass till just right, kind of in the last stages. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spray the area with a little bit of glue to get it prepped. Again, the whole area. Have it ready here. And essentially, what you do, just take a handful and you start blending it in, like this. Again, if you have, multiple shades of turf, you just blend one into the other, essentially. If you want to do your bushes and stuff like that with some clump foliage from Woodland Scenics or something like that, essentially what you do is you put that on first and then you lay on the finer turf after. So it's very important, but you can see we're just kind of going along here. Again, I'm just using the materials that were supplied. So with something like this, whatever you're modeling, whatever part of the country you're modeling or anything like that, it's important to take reference with what time of year is it, what part of the country is it a cold climate, are you going for kind of a let's say a fall scene or something like this. So in this particular case, this is something that would basically be like middle summer, so you have like some grass growing and the grass is relatively green. I'm going to go ahead and start kind of putting a little bit kind of randomly here in the lot too to represent some grass growing through the rocks here. Just kind of randomly again. And then I'll just continue to just fill in this little area here. So now with this larger area, I can go ahead and take the bag out and go ahead and just start liberally applying this here. I'm getting a pretty thick buildup on the outside and just working it only on the outside here. We'll do the touch up in kind of the area between the tracks and the grass here by hand so we can be a little bit more precise. One thing you can do to certain areas where you want maybe some more clump foliage like this, if you don't have any, you can actually take and kind of bunch a little of this turf up like this and just kind of mix it with some of that glue you put down to model more of an unkept kind of a field look basically. That's one way of doing it. And in this case, I kind of want this to look a little rough, so I'm just going to kind of fill in this area here. And essentially what you do, that turf is mixed in with a little bit of that glue, so it'll seal up like that once we're done. But now what we can do is just go back and fill in some of these patches, a little bit more turf, and blend it back together like this. So you can kind of see the rough texture that we've created with that technique. And it's just a great little way, if you don't have any clump foliage, to just kind of make your own on the spot with what you have. And you can see we've basically created a nice rough looking unkept grassy field here. On this side here, I've kept it a little bit more maintained to make it kind of look like maybe the railroad has this area mowed. Essentially, this module is built so you can display it on whatever side you want. So you can have the side with the signal and the code line that I'll eventually put up and some signs or whatever, with the grassy patchy field, or the clean maintained parking lot. And just like before, of course, we got everything in place. We can go ahead and start sealing it in place with more of our scenic cement. And again, just be very, very generous with this. I'll go ahead and hit up all the ballast again, and I'll spray our grassy little area back here down. And we'll let this essentially dry overnight before we do anything else with it. Essentially, the majority of the scenic work is done, and so the next step will be to basically apply all of this fine details. So as we're getting into the final stages of this project here, we're going to start doing all the little detail effects. I've went ahead and gotten some more materials for this project. I'm going to go ahead and start adding some more shrubbery to this area here, and we basically need to start adding some more color to our ground turf here, because we only have the one color and it's a dark lush green, so we need to make this look a little bit more realistic. So what I've done, I've went ahead and picked up some bushes by Woodland Scenics. This is light green. You can get this in various different colors. I have light green here because that's what my hobby shop had at the time. So what we're going to go ahead and do is lay these down, and again, just like anything else, you just basically spray on a little scenic cement, go ahead and prime up the area, and I'm going to basically layer this whole area with these bushes. And then again, this is just another good method to kind of add some variety to the scene, and a little bit of color change as well. So I usually just kind of randomly spread these around. You know, you think of how real bushes would be out in the real world. I'm just keeping it random. Before I add the bushes to this side, I'm going to go ahead and add the final top coat of ballast. And again, I'm using the same buff tone ballast I used for the main track here on the top of the road. The dark ballast underneath is the undercoat to look like dirt. So I want this to look kind of rough and muddy in a bit of a way here. So I'm just going to kind of spread this out here, and we'll still have all of our brown undertones underneath. This is another method I've used multiple times on my layouts. You can also use brown, dark brown, like dead earth tone turf for this as well. But again, since these are the materials I had, I just went ahead to do it this way. And now we can go ahead and start filling in the edges with a few little weeds. I'm not going to go very crazy here, just a few. Just some solid little spots here. Kind of keep them pushed together a little bit. Just here and there. I'm not going to, like I said, go as crazy. But I definitely want some weeds right at the edge of that little road there. Make it look a little bit more unkempt.